welcome everyone to this collective health conversation. My name is Laura Halpin. I'm recording from my home in Walnut Creek, California, which is on the land cared for and stolen from the Bay Miwoks. It is a real privilege to have those of you who are on the call right now and those who will be connecting across time and space for a conversation that I've been waiting and wanting to have for a few months now. And before we take a collective deep breath, I just want to invite Barrington onto the screen and say hello. Hi, Barrington.
Hi there, how are you?
I'm good. I'm so glad you're here.
Oh, I'm glad I'm here too. I have a really good friend of mine, Dr. Patricia Newton, who I've known her since the 90s, and she died yesterday.
Oh no.
We just got news that she transitioned. So I'm glad to be here.
Oh, wow. Hi, Sean.
Hi.
Hey there. So we don't know when it's our time or hour. So I'm very grateful to be here. I'm grateful to be of sound mind and fairly kind of sort of sound body. So yeah.
So let's see, the order in which I want to do this. First, I just want to welcome everyone for joining us. It just feels really important to have conversations that connect us to one another and with ourselves, and with just that take us above the fray, which is so consuming right now. I find it really important to keep our eyes on people who are maybe further out ahead of us in terms of their ability to navigate these times. And so I really welcome this opportunity to connect you all with Barrington Salmon. So for those of you who haven't met Barrington, he is a journalist and communications professional who has been, I think, like over 25 years?
36 years this year.
36 years, okay.
Although
36 years.
I shouldn't say that because that's really aging me.
That's okay. So he has published for news outlets like Acumen, Voice of America, The Washington Times, Diverse Issues in Education. He's freelanced for The Final Call, The Washington Informer, Black Press USA, Black Men in America, and Trice Edney Newswire. And when we were on a Creedal conversation together, I learned that a good friend of his had dubbed him a liberation journalist. His writing is focused on social justice, human rights, women's rights, immigration, and issues particularly affecting people of African descent across the
diaspora.
Yeah. Also an ordained traditional African priest in the Kan Okum tradition, which I know that we'll be understanding more about throughout this call. And so I am assuming, and maybe this isn't safe to assume, but I'm going to assume it anyway, that all of us on the call can embrace the reality that there's many paths to God and to spirit. And today we're going to center Barrington's tradition and just open ourselves up to its wisdom, the way that it has been a source of healing to him and wisdom for others. And so I really welcome that opportunity. And as part of that, Barrington, I am just hoping that you can open up this conversation with a prayer.
Yeah, okay. Ago. Inyame odoman kama atridiong pong asasia beji and sano. Oh nana no. Oh mother and father of creation. Nana Tigare, the deities, the ancestors. Inyame Almighty God, we thank you for the opportunity to come together. We thank you for the opportunity to particularly come together as human beings, as equals, as those who are searching for ourselves, for our way, for the path. We thank you that you are the rock, that you are that stone, that you are that tree that neither bends nor breaks. We thank you that you are present, that you are always present. We thank you that you have allowed us to become connected to you in different ways. And we understand that even as we sit in the midst of this hurricane, that you are the still, calm voice. We thank you for your presence. We thank you for your love. We thank you for the fact that we woke up this morning. We thank you for family. We thank you for our circle, whether it's a circle of friends or a circle of associates or business people or whatever. But we're just thankful that we're breathing. We ask you to continue to bless us, to bless our children, to bless our brothers and sisters and other family members, friends, going out in an ever-widening circle. And we pray most of all that you help us to have clarity and understanding and confidence as we move forward. We pray that you continue to help us to find ways to connect to you in whatever form, because as you said, we are the only ones that keep on making distinctions between what is one spiritual entity, God, Allah, or whatever you call him, her, it, whatever you call they. We say thank you. We say Madasi, and we just pray that we're, as we go through this conversation, that it touches those who need it in the places they need it, and just help me to say what's on my heart, and to continue to just be who I've been. Thank you for Laura for giving us this time and this space. We thank you for everything, for things seen and unseen. I thank you most of all because you have allowed me to sit still and not go crazy in these moments of craziness. I say Madasi and Madasi and Madasi.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So for those of you, I think a lot of you know that I have a conversation series called Cradle Conversations. And Barrington and I engaged in a cradle conversation a couple months ago. And there was a lot of interest in Barrington's life and path. And there was one quote in particular that he shared that I felt really created an opening for another conversation. And it's this: what I learned on my spiritual path is everything we need to succeed, God gave us when we came. We forget the spirit that we are, so that the time we're here is to rediscover who we are. And so this is my first question for you, Barrington, and it's a string of very deep questions. My question is...
Like before, right?
Yeah. My question is, why do we forget who we are, and what does it take to remember?
The simplest explanation I have, I remember when I've encountered friends and family, because you see, my family, particularly my father, always had these stories about what are essentially ghost stories. Mm-hmm. Stories where spirits would come, do things, shift things, change things around, do things to people. And I always kind of laughed about that, because even when he was in his 80s and 90s, he never lost that sense of wonder. I think that when we come, you know, because you see children all the time who, I know children, I have a cousin who for years would see people, spirits, and she'd be having conversations. And I walked in one time and she was having a conversation, and I said to my aunt, what's going on? Because I was like maybe 15, 16, and she said, oh, she sees people all the time and she's talking to them. And my understanding is that as you come into the world, because children are the purest form of human beings to me, because they're open, they're honest, they're gonna say whatever it is without filters. And I think there's a fear that people have if you have children who can see things, so you try to force them to stop saying that they see things, stop interacting. And I think it's just the social pressure that people have that changes the children from knowing who they are and being connected to spirit and expressing that. And then all of a sudden you're in the straitjacket where you can't say this, you can't say that. Because one of the things that has always been interesting to me is that as I have gone down this spiritual path, I have so many people who are like, well, why are you doing that? Why are you going so far outside the mainstream? You dress funny, you look different, you do and say things that normal, sensible people don't say in public. So, if I go somewhere and I offer to pray, that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, because prayer isn't a part of their life or what they do. And I think most of the time, the push is for conformity. And if you're stepping too far one way or the other, then you have different metrics, I guess, meters or measures or whatever, pressures from people to do that. And so I think as we get older and as we seek to conform, you see, one of the things that I've always struggled with is the whole idea of conformity. I think it helped me because I was always the misfit. I was always the oddity. I was always the one that they were saying, Jesus Christ, what the hell is wrong with you? Why can't you be like your twin brother? Why can't you be like the other people in your family? You're always off on a tangent. And luckily for me, I didn't give a damn. I never felt that I needed to be with the rest of people. The way I felt, the things I felt, how I looked at the world, I never had a moment where I felt, well, maybe something's really wrong with you. Maybe you need to start conforming. I always just kind of did my own thing. And anybody who's been in this situation, that you pay a price for being different, for being independent, for being the misfit. But I don't know that there's anything that I have experienced that has made me feel like I lost something for not being conformist.
Can I just say that it's remarkable that you have whatever quality that you have that didn't internalize that, the expectation that you should be different or conform, step in line, whatever. That I find that remarkable because
Is it unusual?
I think it's rare.
Oh,
I really do. I think that's part of the forgetting who we are, is we blame ourselves for the ways that we don't fit in. We think that there's something wrong with us because what's being mirrored back to us is not validating or supportive. And so
Mhm.
I appreciate that fighter in you.
I didn't have a choice.
Oh, I think you do. You
No,
know,
no, I didn't, because from the time that I was born, I was fighting. I'm a
Mhm.
twin. I'm a twin.
Mhm.
Both of my brother and I were preemies. We weren't supposed to live. My brother was 2 pounds and 10 ounces. I was 3 pounds and 15 ounces. And the doctors told my parents we weren't gonna make it. We're still here. My 63rd birthday is next week. Who the hell would have thought that? And in my nihilistic days, when I was in my 20s, my didn't give a fuck days, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not supposed to be here. So I didn't have a choice, because we talked about it in the cradle conversations, how important my parents have been in terms of my direction, my development, and that type of thing. My parents were way ahead of their time. And even though they were both Jamaican, raised in traditional Jamaican society, the way that they thought and the way that they did things was completely different from most people I know. And like I told you, my father rivaled my mother as a cook. My father rivaled my mother as someone in terms of their ability to iron clothes. He washed our clothes. He did chores that Jamaican men said that they would never do because they are not female. My mother said that she would never raise any of her sons to be a burden to any woman that we happened to be involved with. So when we were 5, 6, 7, 8, we were in the kitchen. Every Saturday morning, we had to clean the entire house, myself and my siblings, before we could go to play. And that was every weekend that I can remember until I was grown. So there were things that they put in place for us. And I think I told you, every time that I went home, if I knocked on the door and my mother or father answered the door, we kissed each other. When we were leaving, we kissed each other. My father said, there's nothing wrong with being demonstrative or emotional as a male. So there were things that they gave us. Well, I think I'm the only one in my family that's as way out as I am. But all of us got that grounding and that type of thing. So,
well, and there's the nonconformity for you. They were nonconformists.
oh yeah, for sure,
you know?
for sure. So
Mm-hmm.
I got good lessons,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't have a choice, because for me, for as long as I've known myself, it was always the question of how can I best express myself in whatever way? How can I be the most authentic Barrington? How can I be the person that because I mean, if you think about the idea of those of us who have succumbed to conformity and you're doing everything that they tell you to do, at a certain point, you're like, what the fuck am I doing? You look in the mirror and you're like, this is not me. Yeah. And I feel such sympathy and sorrow for people who discover when they're on their deathbed or close to dying that they should have let go of all this bullshit and found their true selves. And so it's interesting because when you go to Ghana, there are children that I've met who are priests. I met a child who was maybe 6 or 7 years old, who was a Tigray priest, right? So in those types of societies that is dubbed primitive and backwards by industrialized people, there, you have people, you have priests, you have seers, you have shamans, you have parents and queen mothers who can see if their child possesses particular spiritual traits.
Mhm.
And if you're a parent who doesn't know how to do it, you find someone who can guide your child. Because as I told you, we in Akan, the Akan Akom tradition, believe that you make an agreement with God when you come about what you're going to do. And all of us are not going to be priests, but the whole idea is that when we leave, we're supposed to leave the space we're in better than how we found it. And I found out and have continued to find out. I have a friend, well, a new friend, a good friend of my wife, who is a seer. And she came to the house 2, maybe 3 weeks ago. Met her for the first time and she was like, oh. And she stepped away. And I said, what's up? And she's like, you're coming with a whole lot of stuff. And she started reading me, talking about my spiritual past, talking about the fact that there are priests on both sides of my family, which I just found out, like traditional African priests on both sides of my family. And what we are told as Akan is that the priests in your line, in your bloodline, they decide which one of their descendants is going to become the priest to carry on the work that they started. And so I really never had a choice. You know, we grow up in this culture thinking that you choose your profession, you choose the way that you live your life, you choose. And in reality, they chose me. They chose me. And I fought and I resisted and I said, I ain't doing this shit. And it didn't make a difference. I would go to worship services and the deities would say, that's okay, take your time, because we're not going anywhere. And when you're ready, we'll be here. So it took me 4 years. I was told, I went to an Akan priest who was a marriage counselor in 1997. And while we were at the shrine, she said, she channeled her deity who said, you are supposed to be a priest. And I was like, who the hell are you talking about? I said, I don't have a priestly bone in my body. I'm not interested in being a priest. And I said, if it's a priest like being a Catholic, I ain't doing it because I'm not going to be celibate. And I said, and I cuss all the time. So I don't know what you're talking about. And he said, we don't care if you curse and you don't have to be celibate. And you have been chosen to do this. And I fought him for 4 years. So
The idea of being chosen is a really beautiful one, you know, that there's something fated about our existence and our path.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of flies in the face of our individualistic, bootstrapping kind of culture that tells us, you know, I'm a self-made man, or, you know, I did this all myself.
Yeah.
And that brings me to
Can I say something real quick?
Of course you can.
The beauty of this is that I have not lost my individuality. There's enough space within the parameters of my spirituality that allows me to be me.
Well, you dropped a really important anchor, I think, for all of us when you said this question: how can I best express myself?
Yeah.
So I don't know how many cradle conversations I have had, but one of the things that I have noticed is that amongst the Black folks that I've interviewed, that almost without exception, they mentioned their lives in the context of their ancestors and their gratitude for them and how much they have learned and are devoted to them. And also their devotion to making the world a better, safer, more liberated place for their children, that is their reason for being. And, you know, I can't speak for all white folks, but I can say that I don't see that so much amongst white friends, this sense of this is where I've come from, this is where I'm going, I'm part of something so much bigger. And so you have, I mean, you've already talked about your ancestors, that we're held and guided by our ancestors and that we can work with them and communicate with them.
Yeah.
And so can you talk about that? And, you know, even if we haven't been raised with that kind of awareness, do you think it's something that anyone can cultivate? And I also want to say that whoever is on the call, we really welcome anything you want to put in the chat, any questions you have along the way. I really, especially you, Aunt Elaine Ashpool.
So
my husband's aunt is on the line.
Oh, great, great. So here's the thing. I think about it a lot. And one of the things I understand is that we can be one thing or all things at the same time. So I keep on trying to, and I think a part of what has stimulated my questions and my personal inquiry are the conversations that we've had. So an essential part of the African spiritual aesthetic is the relationship between the individual and the people who you have come from. So there are any number of proverbs and stories and other types of things that cement the importance of your ancestors in your path. So it was a part of the African ethos when Africans were on the continent, and they brought it with them. My folks brought it with them. You know, I know based on oral and written tradition in my father's family that the first time that they made note of my ancestors in Jamaica was in 1732. And I found out that that's very unusual because most Africans in the diaspora do not have the means to trace their ancestry because they were property. They may or may not have had, and they would have a first name, but usually no last name. They took the last name of whoever is the person that owned them. Or, you know, a bunch of different barriers were in place that didn't allow the facilitation of Africans having a straight line back to who their ancestors were. Mm-hmm. But even before I became an Akan priest, in my family, and now I'm thinking about it, I think that given the reality of the priestly line and different aspects of the culture that we brought with us from the continent, it was always like, you're not here on your own. You are here because of your parents, their parents, going back. And it was always, and it's funny because even as a child, it was like, I'm not just Barrington Salmon. I'm Enid and Stephen's child. And they didn't even have to tell me that there was a responsibility that I had to them to ensure that I didn't do any bullshit to shame them or dishonor the family name. And that's something I grew up with. And I think I told you in the cradle conversation that a lot of times when I was a teenager, I'd be hanging with my boys and they'd be like, yo, we're gonna go do da-da-da-da-da. And I'd be like, I ain't doing that. I'll catch you when you come back, because if I get caught up in something and we have found out, I couldn't bear the thought of dishonoring my parents' name. And so I would go right and they'd go left. And so becoming a priest just really solidified and cemented for me different threads that I had, because as an Akan, we're taught that our ancestors are not dead, that they're alive and they're animated, and that they are there waiting for us to ask them to help them, to help us, sorry. So a part of what I've learned is how to connect and communicate with my ancestors. And it's not hard. It's as if I'm talking to you. And you start with your parents. For me, it was easy because I started with my parents. And then I started with then I went back to my grandparents. And then it was like all of you who know me, but who I don't know, you bring them all into the circle. And the demands that they have of you is the same that we had talked about, where they say, you know, you are expected to act like you have some common sense, to act in ways that are beneficial to the family, that reflect well on the family, that you have, that they're very, order is very important for them. They don't like disorder. They don't like a bunch of chaos and foolishness. And the thing is that if Laura doesn't know something, you cannot be held responsible. When you are taught, or when you become aware of X, Y, or Z, then you can no longer say, well, I didn't know. And when you go through certain life experiences and you learn that this is what you're supposed to do, this is what you don't do, you can't say, sorry, I didn't know. And I mean, we're human, we make mistakes, but you're expected to have a certain decorum, which a lot of times I don't have, and to move a certain way that is a good reflection on your ancestors. So one of the things that we do is that we pour libation to our ancestors. All libation is prayer. So when I pray, I'm praying to my deity, I'm praying to Almighty God, I'm praying to my ancestors, I'm thanking them for that, the fact that I'm alive, I'm thanking them for the fact that I have good health, I thank them that for having a shelter over my head, that my family is fine, that we're healthy. Anything that you want, anything that you need, you're talking about.
The title of our talk is Remembering Who You Are. And I think that awareness, cultivating that awareness of our connection to our ancestors and our sense of impact on generations to come, just feels like it's part of remembering who we are, because it immediately takes us out of that kind of superficial day-to-day to-do list kind of existence, and it infuses it with meaning. So we also talked, I remember, I think you've done this a couple times, when you use the word moorings, you go like this and you talk about our moorings coming undone.
The stuff that I have done. As you know, I'm a writer, and one of the things that my father used to always say, oh my God, you were so disgusting because you never stopped asking questions when I was a child. And that hasn't changed as I've grown up. So I read a lot, and I try to move into as many different areas that I'm not familiar with as possible. Because one of the things that we need to understand is that there's a whole world out there. And one of the things that I think we may not always understand is that if you are searching, if you are curious, the universe will bring what you need or who you need to you to give you the things you need, right? It's really interesting because, and I'm gonna start crying. I always start crying when I talk about my son. I have a son who will be 30 next month, and he is the heart of my heart. And I talk to people all the time who keep on saying, God, Barrington, you're in your 60s and you should be calming down. You should be throttling down. You shouldn't be so angry. You shouldn't be, all these different things. And I'm like, well, shit. It's not as if we're living in a time and a place, and this is before COVID. It's not as if we live in a time and a place that I can sit back and say everything is fine and that my child is fine. You know, he is fine. He's a naval intelligence officer. He loves his job. He's doing what he wants and all that stuff, right? He has a large family who loves him and who supports him. So on the outside, everything is okay. But if you look at one of the things I always had been working for, one of the reasons why I was always demonstrating and protesting and writing certain types of stories is because I was hoping that we could change the way that things are in terms of how this society deals with Black people. Because the things that I went through as a child and as a teenager and as an adult, I didn't want that for any of my children. And that is the reason why I work so hard. You know, and as I told you, it just kind of blows my mind because children are children. And your child is as valuable to me as my child because they're children. They didn't ask to be here. They didn't ask to come into this. And to me, I've never been able to understand people that I meet who tell you that I only give a fuck about my children and I don't care if your children lives or dies. That doesn't make any fucking sense to me, right? And, you know, I'm not one of these people that says I don't see color. I see color. But if you're a white child or an Indonesian child or a Puerto Rican child or a Vietnamese child, I don't give a fuck. If the child comes into my orbit and needs to be fed, sheltered, or taken care of, I'm going to do it. Because that is the human thing to do. And I think that one of the things that has been thrust in our face by the conditions that we're in is, where do we stand? Where do we stand? I mean, America has been trotting along merrily for the past 200 years, never having to come to account, never been held responsible for any of the things that it's done. And, you know, I don't know, I can't speak for the past, but in this time, in 2020, it's a whole different paradigm. Mm-hmm. It's a whole different paradigm. And people, you know, I'm on social media all the time, and I keep on telling people, yo, at this time in this place, you can't say that you didn't know. Mm-hmm. You can't use that excuse no more that you didn't fucking know. Because everything that was hidden is being exposed.
Yes.
Everything that we didn't talk about that wasn't socially acceptable to be dealt with, it's like, here it is.
Right.
And what this country is wrestling with, what each of us is wrestling with, do I respond to the external stimuli, or do I pretend it's not here? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And most of us want to pretend it's not here.
Mhm.
Because nobody wants to bare their soul, show their vulnerability,
Mhm.
change. Nobody wants to change.
Mhm.
That's why you have all these folks who are like, we don't give a damn if COVID takes us all, but we ain't wear no mask. And we're gonna continue to go to bars and sporting arenas and sit with 50,000 people
Right.
because we want our normal life back. And when you think about that, you're dealing with a global pandemic. You're dealing with a virus, and what they call it, a novel virus, never been seen before. Doctors you talk to tell you that they don't know how it's going to manifest itself next. It manifests itself differently to different people, and you're going to be cavalier enough to say, it doesn't matter, I'm just going to go and what the fuck? That to me shows the depth of sickness that we have in this country. And when I talk about it, people say, fuck you, go back where you came from. If you love this country, you wouldn't criticize it. That's bullshit. Because I love my children. And when they're doing things that I think is detrimental to themselves or to the family, I'm going to be in their goddamn face and let them understand that they can't do that.
Right. Right.
So if you can do that to your family, if you have a brother or a sister or a mother or a father who's doing things that you're like, yo, this can't work. At some point, if it bothers you enough, you're going to confront them. But for some reason, these people keep on saying, you're supposed to let me keep on doing what I'm doing and not question me. It doesn't make any sense. And what we, all of us, have to figure out in this time is, where do we stand?
Yes.
Are you gonna confront your grandfather or your husband or your wife or your friend when they talk about fucking niggas when you guys are in your group, your grouping? Are you gonna call out the business person that does shit to a woman because she's a woman that he wouldn't do to a guy? Right? If you know that adults are doing things to children, are you gonna turn your back and act like it doesn't matter because it's not your child? So these are life and death things that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And thankfully, because of my background, I don't give a fuck. I'm gonna say it. And who don't like it, because I tell them all the time, if you don't pay my rent or buy my food, get the fuck off my face. I don't want to hear it. And I'm telling you that as a priest and as a human being, I cannot walk away and act like I don't see stuff when I see it.
Yes.
I can't do it. I wouldn't sleep. I wouldn't sleep.
You know, one of the things that is floating around in my mind as you're talking is Jen Lemon talking about social contracts.
Yeah.
And that we have these agreements in our families, in our social circles, in our culture, agreements of what we can talk about and what we can't talk about, and what we can see and what we can't see. And what she writes about is that to break the social contracts, to name the things or to say the things, that it feels awful in your body. It feels like you are doing something that is, it feels all kinds of wrong, like you're going to die to say those things. And so I think that what we do is we back away and think, well, I'm not the kind of person that goes out to protest, or I'm not the kind of blah, blah, blah. And so we back away from the breaking of the social contract that needs to be broken in order for
us to live, for us to
live.
For us to survive.
And so Sean writes, it feels like betrayal, because that's what has been conditioned and taught. Yeah. And so going back like to these cradle conversations that I've had, and one of the questions is about how do you rock the cradle? How do you change the systems that are oppressive? And inevitably, even though the work is out there, every single person that I've interviewed points us back to it's the work inside us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that really brings us back to this idea of the hero's journey, that we're reckoning with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that, when you think about the cycle, and I'll put links to the hero's journey in the chat in a second. Yeah. But when you think about the hero's journey, it begins with this place of like illusion. We're living in a world where we think it's great, or I'm okay at least. And, people have my back in the office, or that would never happen to me. And then there's some level of betrayal where it becomes kind of like the illusion is broken. And I feel like we're at a point in our country where people just so want to live in the place of illusion. They don't want to see what there is to see.
Because it's scary. It's scary. I mean, I would never try to tell anyone that if you decide to step down that particular path, that it's not scary as hell.
Right.
And that's where the moorings come in.
Yes.
Because the moorings are those values, those ideas, those people, those places that your religion, your spirituality, other things that have been inculcated into you that give you some sense of who you are.
Yes.
Family, community, fraternity, sorority, the school you went to, the place you work, all these things in one way or another are moorings, things that are a regular part of any given day, right? That if things go crazy during any part of your day, you can come home to your family. Hopefully your family is supportive and loving, and you can fall into them like a nice plush pillow type of deal, right? Or if you are the type of person that is very devout, my mother-in-law, my deceased mother-in-law went to mass every single day, 5 o'clock in the morning. And I kind of smiled to myself because one of the things that we taught, I spent 3.5 years in priest training, 1,096 days in priest training. And as I told you, it was like boot camp, because I thought, well, they're just a couple of things they got to tweak here and there, but they broke me the hell down and rebuilt me in the way, from a character perspective, from an integrity perspective, from, in terms of clarity, in terms of what you see and how you react to these things. That's how they rebuilt you. And so when you get to that point, but I shouldn't even say that, because that is a part of the hero's journey too. It doesn't end. You're constantly learning. You're constantly changing. There are different external stimuli, people that you meet, situations that you are presented with. I mean, I look at how I was in my 20s. Sometimes there are things that happen to me now that I have to chuckle, because I'll meet somebody, or we'll get into some confrontation, and I can tell them in very nice terms how I feel and walk away. That wasn't the way it was when I was in my 20s. Anybody who came in my face, we're gonna be rolling. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, And Laura, Laura's funny because I was on Facebook maybe a month ago, right around the time we were going to do the Cradle Conversations.
Mhm.
And she messaged me and she was like, God, you know, I saw some conversation, well, it wasn't a conversation, it was like a fight, some conversation that you had with some people, and it was so nasty and dirty and da-da-da-da. And I said, shit, I relish that.
Yeah, I was checking in on Barrington to make sure he was okay and he had had fun.
Yeah, I mean, because for me, I don't believe that if I meet Sean, and Sean has a particular perspective that is completely different from mine, I'm gonna try to understand where he's coming from. I'm gonna push back at some shit that I think doesn't make any sense to see if he can defend what he believes. And I expect him to do the same thing for me. So that is a function of what I'm doing in Facebook. I'm constantly meeting people that I've never met, don't know, would probably never meet out in my regular life.
Mm-hmm.
And they come with some stuff sometimes, and I'm like, yo, what the fuck you talking about? And I'll push them and press certain buttons because I want to see, because for me, people say to me, well, oh, you know, do you go around and tell people, like, try to convert people to Akan? Hell no. And I don't see the necessity of trying to defend my God.
Mm-hmm.
God don't need me to defend him or her or it or they.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not my job.
Mm-hmm.
But within the context of social media and just meeting people, I'm curious. I want to know what Sean's background was like that led him to be a fucking Proud Boy. And if Sean talks to me, because sometimes you meet these people and they don't want to deal with you because they think that you're inferior, they think that you are whatever. They don't want to deal with you. But if I meet somebody who, like I said, comes from a really different place, I want to try to understand where they're coming from.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that happens. I have a friend, a really good friend, who grew up in southern Louisiana during segregation. And he said the encounters that he had with white people in his little town and where he lived, he said, fuck white people. I don't talk to them. I only deal with them if I gotta deal with them on the job. I don't have no friends who are white people. Mm. And I said to him, bruh, that's a whole section of the fucking world that you've locked yourself out of. Mm. Because I don't believe that every white person is evil. And I don't believe that every black person is an angel. Mm-hmm. I said a part of your path, your movement through life is to figure out who is who. Mm-hmm. And he called me, he said, bruh, I have just been following you on Facebook and looking at your friends and looking at the things your friends are saying. And it just blows my mind because you have white friends who are as devoted and committed to you as black people. And I said, because people are people. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because people are people. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know? And a part of my own personal job is to find those people. Mm-hmm. My best friends, one is Jewish and one is Jamaican. Mm-hmm. And if I call David and I say, David, when do you need it? That's the end of the fucking conversation. Mm-hmm. When do you need it? What do you need and when do you need it? Yeah. Right? And that's 30 years, that's 35 years of friendship. Mm-hmm. Right? That's 35 years of me and him being at Florida State and walking on campus at 1 o'clock and having to fight off them racist motherfuckers who want to beat him because he's with a black dude. Right? That's 30 years of being a friend. That's 30 years of being with him when he was getting divorced. It's 30 years of him coming to me and saying, my wife has poisoned my children against me and they don't talk to me anymore. And I said to him, here's what you do. And I gave him a prescription of how to deal with his son. Mm-hmm. And he came back to me and said, oh shit, it worked. He and his son are like this now.
Mm-mm.
And they didn't use to talk before because the mother basically told all these lies to her son, to her children about him, and they believed it.
Mm-hmm.
I keep on telling people that when you distill our entire life experience, there's very little that white people want for themselves or their children that Black people and Latinos and Native Americans and Vietnamese don't want for their children as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's no difference.
Mm-hmm.
But we live in a society that is exploitive.
Yes.
And the only way that you can continue to exploit Connie or Jan is if you dehumanize them and demonize them and make them seem to be less than human. Then you can do what the fuck you want. That is why we still have those children and men and women in cages, because this government has made them seem like they're not fucking human beings.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And to me, it is an indictment on this country that the people have allowed this government to do that, and they haven't gone down there and torn down them fucking detention centers and taken them children and people out.
Right.
That's our responsibility. That's our responsibility.
Yes.
Because Angela Davis said, if they come for you in the morning, they're coming for me at night.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's real interesting because I'm looking at all of these protests and demonstrations and marches that started on March 25th, 26th, when they killed George Floyd. This is the first time in a long time that white people are realizing that the elites and the people that control this country don't give a fuck about white people, just in the same way they don't care about Black people. Right. Because then police are beating the shit out of white people and busting heads and putting them in jail in the way that they were doing when only Black people were marching. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And we need to understand that and process that and figure out ways to fight against this beast. Mm-hmm. Because they're coming for all of us.
And so what I'm thinking about, Barrington, is I'm thinking about how each one of us is a thread in the fabric of our culture, you know, and so it matters that we tug on our thread, you know, we begin to unravel the threads that are woven around us, you know, and that just drives me back to this idea of the hero's journey and the social contracts and the embodied resistance we have to going within to do that reckoning that is required in order to say those words and name the things and be heroic, you know. And so I want to go back to this idea of the hero's journey, and if I could just take a moment to drop a couple links in. I have a diagram of the hero's journey and one of the heroine's journey. And what I want to do is I want to just talk about what that looked like in your life, because the
hero's journey?
Yeah, because
Okay.
you're talking as if it's in your nature, but I don't think it's true. Like, you know, you talked about your journey to priesthood went against that grain, and that you needed to be broken down, which I think is part of the hero's journey. So I'm going to just take a moment to look for my links. Let's see. Here's one from, it's on like a science fiction writing site that I thought was pretty interesting.
But science fiction, it's interesting that, you know, because if you go back and read or listen to Joseph Campbell, who is the one that really, he's not the first, but he's the one that popularized the whole thing about the hero's journey. Star Wars took his George Lucas took the whole the paradigm and put it in Star Wars, and Ray Bradbury and Kurt Vonnegut all of them use it. So it's all connected. It's all related.
Mm-hmm. And I think that, you know, I remember that Joseph Campbell series with Bill Moyers.
Bill Moyers, amazing, amazing. It's on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's like 25, 30 years old now.
Mm-hmm. And I think also it's very interesting. I included a link by a woman named Victoria Schmidt, who looks at the heroine's journey as opposed to the hero's journey. And of course, there's much less warfare involved in the languaging around a heroine's journey, which doesn't require necessarily slaying of the dragon. But I still think that the illusion and the call and the resistance and the, you know, there's so many of the same phases and internal work that you have to do. So
I would push back against you by saying
feel free.
that even though the wording may not be as martial and, you know, dealing with all this war and all that stuff, it's no less so for the heroine, because we have got to slay the dragons of fear and doubt and insecurity and lack of confidence. That shit is hard. That's hard. And there are lots of us that will never get to that point. Or you may start the process, move to a certain point, and you're unable to go any further. So I'm thinking about what you asked me. It's kind of funny because I've never thought of myself as a hero. And so, but
Probably wouldn't like you if you did.
Oh, okay. But the thing is that if you look at the hero or heroine's journey, like you said, that they're in a place where in the beginning they think everything's fine, everything's okay, and then they begin to encounter certain challenges that reveal things about themselves, reveal things about the lives around them, reveals things about the people who are in their lives or people who they encounter. And you know, the thing is that once you know, you can't unknow, you know. You can't unknow. So if you've begun the journey and you are peeling back the onions of who you are as a person, how do you react to pressure? How do you react to conflict? How do you react when things are thrown at you unexpectedly? These are things that in the beginning you ain't gonna know how to react until you're there. And I think a part of what we do or need to do, whether you're a priest or a pauper, is figure out, how am I going to react to this? Why am I reacting this way? Is this beneficial to me going forward? And how do I change? Because in a way, it's almost as if you're learning to become comfortable with the things that give you the most pain. Mm-hmm, 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 mm-hmm. Because we can still do fight or flight, you know. You can encounter something or someone who tears you in such a way that you can run like hell and keep running. I think of somebody very close to me who I used to be married to and is almost 60 years old. And I look at her and I am sad because she has not changed in 30 years. Mm-hmm. A lot of the same issues that she was struggling with 30 years ago, it's the same thing, because she refuses to face and try to defeat those foes. So the first thing that we got to do is to tell ourselves and tell the universe that if we're encountering things that scare the shit out of us, that we're not going to run. That you're going to at least stay around and try to figure out what it is you're dealing with, why, and how you're going to, because for me, every day that I wake up is an opportunity for me to do better and to try to come into closer terms, better terms with things that I didn't do so well yesterday. My temper is one thing. I have a furious temper. And based on talking to my father's siblings, my grandmother was fierce and furious. And they say that she and her siblings legendary tempers. And it's taken me all this time to get to a point where I no longer allow people or places or things to just set me off. So it's a process. So and we've talked about it, and I tell you that the first thing that we got to do the minute that we're at the point where we realize that we're on this journey is to tell yourself that you're enough. And to tell yourself, I know I'm going to make mistakes. Because I know people who, even now, if they make a mistake, they spend the next 10 years commiserating about the mistake they made. Shit, let it go. And I keep on saying, did you lose an arm? No. Did you lose a leg? No. So what the fuck? Let it go. Let it go.
Well, I think when we're afraid, I think what we naturally do is we stiffen, we tense up,
That's fine.
brace ourselves. And what you're suggesting by saying you're enough, and is you're suggesting that we soften.
No, I assume
I'm hearing
that if we're encountering something and it scares you, you're gonna stiffen and you're gonna soften at some point, because you can't be in this adrenaline soaked place forever. But what I'm saying is that when you exhale, if you didn't deal with that challenge in the way that you thought was the best, Barrington, that's okay. Because if you live for any length of time, that junk gonna come back. And one of the things that they keep on telling you is that if you have challenges that you have not dealt with, it's gonna keep on coming back in different forms until you master it. So it's gonna come back.
I think one of the most uncomfortable feelings in the world is to know what you know, but not want to know what you know. It's that the illusion is broken. But oh God, we want to go back. Oh God.
That's where America is. Because America would much prefer if we went back to December 31st, 2019, right? Because 2020 has been a shit show. And it has put, I mean, listen, and I'm not telling you all anything that you don't know. I'm still, the only reason why I'm saying is because of this. This is my shrine. One of my shrines. This is Tigare, right? The only reason why I'm not crazy, I'm trying to figure this thing out, is because I have my shrines to lean on. And every day when I pour libation, Tigare says, other deities say, we got this. We are bigger than Donald Trump. We're bigger than Mitch McConnell. We're bigger than coronavirus. We're bigger than anything that any challenge that we as human beings can face.
When we're connected, we're bigger than.
When you're connected. And so for me, I think that the universe is forcing us to reassess everything that we held dear, because money ain't gonna help you. and your job ain't gonna help you. And all of these things, that jewelry and woman and cocaine and men, none of these things can help you. And a part of my mission that I've been given as a priest is not to tell you that I want Jan and Marion to become a Khan. It's to tell you to search for whatever spiritual entity, spiritual thing, spiritual whatever that you're comfortable with. Begin the relationship with that entity and build the communication and the that no matter what pulls you, you ain't going nowhere. I have been in Akan culture, spirituality and culture since 1997. And there has not been a day from then until now that I've ever had a doubt about anything that I am as an Akan person, as a priest, as a wife of Tigray, as someone connected to Enyame, Almighty God, and someone connected to the spiritual path. Never, 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 never had 1 nanosecond of doubt. Mm-hmm. And it's times like this, in this type of uncertainty and craziness, that everything that I believe is manifest. Mm-hmm. Mimi and I are working, my wife and I are working. We have not stopped working since this started. Mm-hmm. I write for 6 or 7 newspapers. I have more work than I can handle, right? Mm-hmm. We're stable financially. Our children are okay. Family and friends are okay for the most part. We have family who have gotten COVID. We have family who died from COVID, right? But we're here. And all I do is do what I've been doing, which is pour libation, pray every day, do the work and the rituals that are required of me as a priest. And they said, if you take 1 step, we'll take 10. So that is the crux of what is holding me. As friends fall away, as I lose jobs, or as we lose jobs, when all the things that we thought were immutable in our life, unmovable in our life, falls away. Because listen, when you think about the idea that for the past 244 years, there have been established institutions, established norms, established things that marked the United States as United States, and one by one, they're falling away. What the hell are you supposed to do? What do? The notions of family has changed. The way that we work has changed. 56 million of us don't have a job anymore and don't know where a job is coming from. So here's what I see. COVID is telling us that the way that we were living is no longer tenable, right? So, and I'm seeing it in my communities. People are making their own family units that are different from blood families. And it's built around any number of things that people choose. People are bartering because they don't have money. Barrington is a good carpenter, and Laura needs some work done, so she gives Barrington some food, right? That's what we got to be doing if we're not doing it. Because I'm telling you, if you even look closely at America's food distribution system, it's getting ready to fall apart. And most of us are not farmers. We don't produce our own food. So what are we going to do? Because you see, this is just like some really funky cycle. When the occupant came into office, he started attacking immigrants, undocumented immigrants, the ones who are in the meat packing plants, the ones who are growing and harvesting our food. So he took that away, right? Then he had the tariffs, which, I mean, Jamaica. The United States used to produce like 50% of all the soybeans in the world. Mm-hmm. And now with his tariffs and the tariff wars with China, America may have 2%. So you have hundreds of farmers who are going bankrupt every day. That's food that's now no longer being produced. Subsidies have been taken away from different aspects of agriculture. And now think about this. We're in this country, which they say is the greatest country in the world. And you have 130 million people going to bed every night hungry. But farmers kill cows and bury them. They open the spigots and let go tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of gallons of milk. They destroy food and people are hungry. How the fuck does that make any sense?
Right.
That don't make no sense. So we, you, me, all of you, gotta begin to make noise, to rattle the cages, call your council member, city council member, call Congress, do everything. Talk to corporations. I mean, every time that I would go to a fast food joint, I'd be pissed. Because if you order something and they give you the wrong order, they don't give the food to someone who's hungry. They throw that shit away. Mm-hmm. That don't make no sense.
Right. And so I mean, this sounds so simple and basic, but what I think feels like the heart of the matter is the illusion. So many of us are still hanging on to the illusion that the United States is the greatest country on earth, that we are bringing democracy throughout the world, that that we're the light shining on the hill. And so to really be able to say, this is not what we have said it is. The story is not true. The way that we have been educated is not true. It's all like smoke and mirrors. And to really start living from that place of, we've actually gotten it all wrong.
It's scary.
And to be able to live from that place that is not rooted in the illusion that, because until we start living from that place, we're going to be blaming the Colin Kaepernicks. We're going to be blaming the people who are ruining property when they're protesting, rather than sitting with like the truth of why they is.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But you know what the beauty of this is? Because I don't see any of this as zero sum. There are so many fabulous things about this country. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's not all bad.
Right. Well, it's the same as a dysfunctional family, right?
Yeah. The good and the bad. And, right. And so I think that one of the things that we need to be doing is to latch onto those things that are good. Because for me, it is the fact that I can go to pretty much to many communities, and if I take the time to talk to people, I'm going to find decent human beings who are not much different from me. You spend a little time talking to them, you figure out what you guys have in common. Are you aligned politically? Are you aligned socially? Do you have the same or similar goals of what you want for yourself, your family, and your community? So to me, this just requires a little extra work in the beginning, because we no longer have those structures in place that you can just step to and say, well, you expect X, Y, or Z if you interact in these spaces. So for me, I'm looking at it as you build on the things that you already know work. Since no one's saying, I'm not saying that everything about this country is wrong and blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of different things that that this country represents. I mean, it has been attracting the world's most intelligent people for decades, right? All these scientists, all these researchers, I mean, they've been coming here to the detriment of the countries that they're coming from. Because one of the biggest problems that developing countries have is that their best people are always leaving to come to America or Canada or Britain or whatever. So I know that where I stand is very different from where other people stand. And I pray, I'm not suggesting that making that shift is easy or not painful, but it's necessary. I don't know if you guys have been watching Lovecraft Country. They had this most recent episode, this lady, this woman, mother, wife, business owner. The whole episode deals with her calling her name, naming herself. It's like a journey of self-discovery. And a part of one of the things that struck me was that she said, when I started as a child, I believed that I could do anything. I believed that I could name universes, I could do all these things. And she said, because of sexism, gender bias, racism, she continued to shrink herself to fit into the parameters of the expectations that people had for her as a woman, as a Black woman, as a mother, as a wife. And it just reminded me that one of the things that we have to do is to expand. We got to expand. We can't let society tell us that Laura can't do certain things, that Elaine is only allowed to do X, Y, or Z. I mean, and that to me is a lifelong process. And it's different for everybody because of the circumstances in which they find themselves. I'm only 6 foot tall. I'm 6 foot tall. I'm about 220 something pounds. And I have had people say to me, you need to shrink yourself, because when you walk around, first of all, you act like you own everything, and the way that you carry yourself, you intimidate and scare white people. I've heard it all the time. And I kind of smile to myself because I'm like, well, shit, I don't know how to shrink myself. I wouldn't know where to begin.
That's so funny that you say that, because I was just re-listening to a Cradle conversation that I had with a woman named Vanessa, a mentor, who's from Haiti. And she was talking about the way that she rocks the cradle is by becoming bigger than the cradle, you know, and the only way that she can become bigger than the cradle is by I can't remember her exact words, but it was through this very intimate knowing of herself. So we're at almost yeah, we're almost at an hour and a half. And so we're going to do a part 2, and I want to go through like the actual stages of the hero's journey. And I want everyone, I want everyone to come back and exactly like I want you to. No, but
it was helpful. I hope I wasn't just talking in circles.
I don't think so. I think it has been, I feel like we've been dredging up, and what I'm looking for is for us to return with what that call is for each one of us. Because I think it's no mistake that we're on this call about remembering who we are and the hero's journey. And so next time in 2 weeks, what I'd like to do is go through that cycle and talk about what it was like for you and how it might show up, the different phases of the hero and heroine's journey show up for us. Yeah. But before we stop, I would love to see if there are questions or comments that anyone here would like to share.
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy. Or even comments. Oh, Sarah, thank you, Sarah, says this was very helpful. It didn't feel circular at all.
Yeah. Connie's talking about exile. Yeah, a very real part of that journey, and finding yourself and not allowing yourself to be diverted away from who you are. I mean, this has been a very lonely path for me, particularly earlier in my life. I am blessed because my wife is my ride or die, and we're aligned spiritually. We have the same goals and missions, and we just support each other. So that has helped me considerably. What is the most viscerally memorable spiritual lesson along my journey? Sean, you know what it is, Sean? It really is surrender. Because when you're dealing with a stone-head, stubborn person like me, who resisted from day one. I was in training for 3.5 years, and I didn't have my aha moment until the early part of the 3rd year, when it was like, God, you're so goddamn stupid. You've been fighting and fighting and fighting, and they've said to you, we'll sit here until you figure this out. So I think for me, it has been understanding that there are forces well beyond me who know, because here's the beauty of having of ancestors. Every ancestor that we have lived here on earth before we did. They have experiences that we had. They've done things that we've done. They've made mistakes. They've done all of these different things. So in the same way that you as a parent will tell your child, do not go right, go left, because you know what's in front of them if they go in the wrong way. It's the same type of thing with your ancestors. And so I lean on them heavily, because I know, because and Laura, what we learn of our ancestors is that they only want our greatest good, which is the same thing that we feel from our deities, from Almighty God, from the universe. And so when you know, for me, it was like a realization that none of the forces around me, not my ancestors, not the deities, wanted anything bad to happen to me. They wanted me to move from being a child to being an adult in my thinking and my movement and everything. And when I realized that, it was like, okay, I'm good. So I let go. And just about every day now, there were different times when Tigray will say, you need to do X, Y, Z. And I'm like, I don't know if I should do that. And he'll say, it may not make sense to you, but you need to do it because you will see the outcome when you do. So regardless of what he tells me to do, I do it and it works out.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Sarah.
Mm-hmm. Jan?
Did that help, Sean? Okay.
Jan, it looks like Jan has a question.
Yes.
No, I just want to say, identify with your statement about the universe brings to you what you need.
Yes.
And you said also about, we didn't ask to be here. My mom had a lot of sayings and stories, and that was one thing she used to talk about. Particularly, she loved all ages, but with little kids, I always remember,
Yeah.
none of them asked to be there, and so we have responsibilities, care for them.
Yeah. We do.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and the thing is that you don't know who you're nurturing.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want children. For a long time, I didn't want children. And a friend of mine said, suppose your child is a child that finds a cure for cancer. And I was like, oh shit, I never saw that. No, that is what convinced me that, if I have a child, I'm cool with it. Because for a long time, it was like, I will not bring my child into the experiences, the place that we're in, because I'm gonna kill somebody if someone does something to my child.
Mm-hmm.
And that particular conversation had me go, whoa, and made me just say, okay, if I have a child, it won't be, and I'm glad I did, because my son is real interesting. He'll call me and I'll say, Julian, how you doing? I'm fine. Everything good? Yes, Dad. What's going on? Nothing, Dad. I'm like, okay, fine, bye. And then sometimes he'll be like, Dad, we had a conversation 4 days ago. It was 3 hours long. And it was about everything. And I kept on thinking, shit, my child is a man. My child is a man. And he said he's talking about relationships and marriage and the direction he wants his job to go and influences on him from his mother and a whole range of things. And he said to me, I said to him, thank you that you feel comfortable enough to talk to me. And he said, you're the only person I've ever said this stuff to. My work is done. My work is done. So and I give thanks every day, because when he was 7 years old, his mother took him and said that I would never see him again. Yeah. And we fought for 3 years. I went to court. They said they couldn't do anything, and I didn't see him for 3 years. Mm-hmm. And he called me just before the beginning of summer, and he was like, I want to be in DC, and why am I not there? And I said, I want you here. Your mother doesn't. Go talk to your mother. I said, you have my permission to tell her anything that you want, to convince her to let you come to see me. And about an hour later, she called me and said, whenever you want your son, you can come get your son. Mm-hmm. And that was when he was 7. He's 30, he'll be 30 years old next month. He's never said what he said, and she won't tell me what he said. But I got it.
Wow.
But I got him. Wow. And I have friends who, I had a friend who called the other day, and he said, I don't know what to do because I have 3 children and none of them talk to me because of their mother. Mm. So wow. I know a lot of people who have children and the children don't deal with them. So I give thanks every day for the relationship that Julian and I were able to develop. Mm-hmm. And it's not just me. I know that the universe, that God had a hand in it happen. So
Sometimes we have to wait.
Yeah.
You know, the thing that is so healing about being around you, Barrington, is that what I was talking about in the beginning, your sense of connection, your relationship with your ancestors, and that you're part of something that is ongoing. And I think that I can only imagine that that gives you a patience with the bullshit of the day.
Yeah, because all of this is temporary.
And I also, you know, I feel like I learned that kind of patience from Sean too, you know, that just slow and steady presence, the cultivation of relationships over time, and believing in something that you can't imagine or see right now.
Yeah.
And so I just, out of respect for everyone's time, I would love to just kind of call this, you know, kind of close our circle.
Yeah.
And if anybody wants to just say, you know, one thing that they're taking from this conversation or something that they appreciate, I think that would help us just kind of know what's ours to take away and let it work on us until we come back in 2 weeks.
Okay.
And you can say something in the chat or just unmute yourself. Euler?
It's shy.
I'll start.
Thanks,
Hi,
Sarah.
Barrington. Hi, Laura. Hi, everybody on the call.
How are you?
Good. Thank you guys so much for this. I'm in the middle of a deep healing journey that's been throughout life, similar to what you were sort of sharing, Barrington. And I just want to thank you. My takeaway was that I'm on the right path, and that just to trust myself and what's being presented and showing up in front of me, whether I like it or not. There's a reason why it's there, and I don't understand now.
Yeah.
So thank you.
That's good. And I will say that one of the things I learned is that little voice that tells you what you should or shouldn't do. If you're in tune and you listen, you can't go wrong. That's the ancestors talking. That is the universe talking. And you know, and I tell you, every time that little voice says, Barrington, you need to do B, and I go, I think I need to do A. I come back and I'm like, shit, I messed up. I should have done. So Sarah, yes, continue to listen. And one of the things that we talked about in the cradle conversation was that we need to come to a place where we're comfortable and confident in who and what we are. That we don't spend 24 hours a day questioning who we are. Because if you do, you're going to end up just chasing your tail. So you have to come to a point where you say, you know, this particular thread that society says I need to be a part of, or I need to adhere to, if it doesn't work for me, I can leave it. You have to give yourself permission to let go of certain things. And that's what I did, because I told Sarah, when I was a child, from the time that I was like about 5 until like 18, 19, all I heard was, oh my God, you're so ugly. You're so ugly. Why are you so ugly? And I have a twin brother, and they kept on saying, your twin brother is so good looking and you're so ugly. And this was for the whole time, from the time that I was conscious until I was 19. And when I was 19, I looked in the mirror and I said, well, hey, bud, you ain't going nowhere. You ain't changing. So you might as well just fall in love with who you are. Be comfortable with who you are. Deal with who you are as you are. And fuck anybody who says different. that was my liberation. That was my liberation. Because when I got to that point, I was no longer thinking about what people were thinking. I was no longer trying to squeeze my life into people's expectations. And I just did what I wanted. Whole new world. So.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah.
So glad
Thank
to
you, Sarah.
Anybody else before we close?
Well, I'm going to say thank you. I'm sorry I'm late. This always catches me during work. So I always get to listen to the recording, which is wonderful because I can actually really stop. And so I feel very, very thankful for you being here, Salmon, and for Laura just creating these spaces constantly that are so wonderful to self-reflect. So just on this little bit of time that you were talking, I appreciate you talking about being kind to ourselves and, you know, looking back that every day can be new, because I do see that we can get stuck so much on that, you know, and being hard on ourselves, and the idea that waking up every morning feeling that we can do better without beating ourselves is just such a gift. So why suffer? So I really appreciate you saying that. And I love the idea of libations. I have a little mantra. I think it's helpful sometimes to get out of context. And that's what it does. You get out of context when you have this little thing that works for you. So looking forward to hearing the whole conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marianne.
And as during the cradle conversation, Sarah and I were talking, and I was just reminding her of the fact that we live in a society that continually bombards us with what is perfect, the perfect body, the perfect face, the perfect this, that, and the other. And we end up being caught up in this crazy hamster wheel of comparing ourselves to quote unquote perfect people. And that is probably the quickest way for us to go crazy, because none of us measure up.
Right.
None of us measure up. And that is where Laura and I started saying, I am enough. Whoever you are, however you look, whatever. And the thing is that the skin we're in is temporary. It's temporary. The more important part is the spiritual energy that you carry within this skin. And I tell people all the time, boobs are gonna fade. Nice chiseled chests are gonna get fat, and you know, boobs are gonna drop. So all of these things that we spend so much time physically worrying about is gonna fade. And if you don't have good character, integrity, and your spiritual mooring, then you don't have anything. Nothing that's gonna last beyond the whatever length of time we're here. And we always must remember, each of us are sparks of the divine. Each of us are sparks of the divine. And a part of our job while we're here is to make that reconnection with the Creator, that creative spark, that creative energy that animates us all. That's what we're here for. And we're here to take care of each other. We are here to take care of each other. Because we're in Jamaica, they have a saying that says one blood. One blood. We're all one blood. We may look different, we may have different colors, but all these scientists keep on telling you that when they cut us open, there is no difference between white people and Chinese and Black. There's no difference physiologically. So we spend all this time and all this energy fucking around with the bullshit about people's color when it doesn't mean anything. So that's the type of stuff we got to change as well. And that that is our responsibility. Each of us can do what we need to do in our little corner of the world to change that.
Barrington, thank you so much for, it's good to just be in the room together. It's good to be reminded that we're sparks of the divine, and the reason we're here is to take care of one another. I mean, that's very, 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 that's medicine that helps like take the sting out of last night's debate, you know. Got to be reminded.
Last night's debate was just distraction.
Okay, so we're not even going to talk about it.
No. Sometimes you need to decompress. But what I'm saying is that if you look at what his motives were, if you look at the things that he's been doing, he's doing everything that is opposite from what people in this room are trying to do.
Right.
We're trying to connect. We're trying to move in. We're trying to create spaces that allow each of us to have the freedom to move and to be safe and to share and to understand that there are more similarities than not. His whole thing is, and I tell people all the time, he has decided that if he doesn't stay in after November the 4th, he's going to destroy the whole fucking country and take the whole country with him. I'm convinced. And so even as we go through the process of discovering who we are, we also have the job to be the resistance against this fascists. And we have got to learn to chew chewing gum and walk at the same time, because there's so much going on and we're so overwhelmed and we're so scared and things are so uncertain, but we have to act, because if we don't act, we're gonna die.
And this is where the heroism comes in. So,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
we're going to, I just want to say thank you so much again for being with us. Thank you so much for those of you who have been here, and we'll talk to you in 2 weeks. I'll send out the recording before then, okay?
Thank you all for coming in. We're glad to have you.